Good morning. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from YourBlackWorld.com. This week, you saw that there was an interesting story about the coach at Oklahoma, Bob Stoops, basically saying that he didn't see a problem with his players being hungry at night. He said that to his guys, you're not the only, you're not the first person to go hungry on a Sunday night. And a lot of people took issue with what he had to say. Because, in case you don't know, Stoops is one of the highest paid college football coaches in the country. He makes, I want to say his last contract was $40 million over 8 years, if I'm not mistaken. And so a lot of people see a little bit of hypocrisy there, that the NCAA is glad to allow other people to become millionaires on the backs of unpaid athletes. And many of these athletes are hungry. Many of them don't have health insurance. Many of them are taking out student loans just to make basic expenses. And you can't even give them a bag of groceries without risking the loss of eligibility and, in some states, criminal charges. So to try to understand this on a more detailed, more nuanced level, I want to bring in Solomon-Simmons, who is a prominent attorney out of Oklahoma. He has represented several professional athletes in the past. He also happens to be an alum and former football player for the Oklahoma Sooners, where Stoops coaches. So first I want to ask DeMario, how you doing today, brother?
Hey, man, I'm doing good, Dr. Boyce. Appreciate you having me on today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm glad you're here. Now, I know that's your home state, and I'm not going to push you to say anything that might upset too many of your friends. But I was curious. I wanted to ask you, did you hear about what Stoops said and all that stuff?
You know, I did, and like you said, I played at OU. I didn't play under Stoops, but I do know him, and I think he's a very, very good coach. But, yeah, I did hear that, and I must tell you, a lot of the former players, even players who played for Coach Stoops, was pretty surprised and taken back of what was said, particularly when you're saying being hungry on a Sunday evening and saying you're not the first to be hungry. And I think guys was really shocked and didn't understand, why would he say such a thing and come, say that in that manner and look like he was kind of callous with what he was saying. Now, he did try to backtrack a little bit the next couple of days, but I really don't think that he got his point across, or I don't think what he said makes sense in the context of athletes in general. Generate so much money for the universities, and they are not getting their just due.
Interesting. So, a lot of people sort of used that comment as a segue to talk about college athletes and just overall labor rights. That it's one thing to say that they're not getting paid, but it seems to me that it's even deeper than that. It's one thing if I tell you, DeMario, look, I'm not going to pay you. But it's another thing if I say, not only am I not going to pay you, but nobody can pay you. Do you think that that's kind of overkill? I mean, you're an attorney. You understand how law works and antitrust law and things like that. I mean, do you think that there's kind of a claim for labor rights violations here?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I totally believe 100% that athletes, college athletes, major college athletes deserve to have full 100% labor rights. I mean, this is America. And an American right is to be rightly and justly compensated for your labor. No matter how anyone tries to spin it, the current system is unjust. It's un-American. I think it's unethical. In fact, I would liken the current collegiate system more to almost like a sharecropping or a penis farming type of system where you have individuals who come in and, as Coach Stoops said, hey, you're given free room and board, and which I take exception to the word free. You're giving room and board, you're giving tuition, you're giving books, etc. But that's just like the sharecropper who was given land and tools to work on some rich person's land, only to not be able to actually participate in the profits at the end of the year. So I think this is a real big issue that the NCAA cannot sustain when you're talking about the billions and billions of dollars in revenue that these players are bringing in each year. That pays for the big contracts of the coaches, that pays for the big contracts of the athletic directors, that pays for the expansion of locker rooms and facilities, that pays for beautification projects all across campus, that raises the stake of universities. Look at your Louisville. You guys just won a national championship. I know you're excited about that. But think about the public relations bonanza that you guys have been able to gain because you won a national championship. We're talking about millions of dollars in exposure that because you won a national championship, yet those players are not going to reap in those profits.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. Just so people can put it into context, they need to understand that whenever there's a big event on national television, that usually means somebody's making money. The NCAA, their games are as big as professional sports leagues. In fact, they're bigger in many cases. Many of the top sporting events ever watched on television have been college basketball and college football games. The NCAA, in fact, makes more money from its postseason than the NBA, the NFL, and the National Hockey League. Just yesterday, I was on the phone with a person you and I both know and respect, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and we were talking on the air, and Attorney Barbara Onwine was on there along with Dave Zirin, and some interesting points that they brought up were that that there was a study that showed that if the average Division I basketball player received their full market value, they would earn a salary of over $1 million a year. The average D1 college football player, particularly those at places like Oklahoma, would make over $500,000 a year. And so when you compare that to tuition, room, and board, there's really no comparison. And the idea that the athlete doesn't even have the option of receiving those benefits in cash, as opposed to being forced to take a scholarship, being forced to take what the university gives them, is I think another aspect of these questionable labor rights. And last thing I'll say on that, DeMario, and then I'll let you get the last word, is that, somebody mentioned, I said, well, why should athletes have to wait until they possibly go pro to reap any of the financial benefits from their work? And the person said, well, because when they go to college, they're not professionals, so they shouldn't get anything. I said, no, scratch that. You got that wrong. When they go to play college sports, they are professional athletes. They're just unpaid professional athletes. Everything about the rigor of the schedule, and you can testify to this directly. I mean, you played football at Oklahoma, where football is taken very seriously, almost as seriously as if you're playing for the Dallas Cowboys. You're in a constant state of physical exhaustion. Yeah, right. I mean, they pushed you guys as hard as professional athletes get pushed. I mean, am I talking crazy here?
No, you're absolutely right. And you said a lot of great things. The first thing about that study, you're talking about the study which is called The Price of Poverty in Big-Time College Sports. A friend of mine, Ellen Stoswowski, and co-wrote that with the brother who runs the National Collegiate Players Association. Again, that's The Price of Poverty in Big-Time College Sports. But you're right on line. Now, our schedules as a college athlete is just as rigorous as a professional athlete, because of the fact that not only are you going and you're playing major college athletics and you're going through all the training and the practice and the film study, but then you have school on top of that and everything else that goes into being a college athlete. So in many cases, in some cases, it is actually probably more difficult to be a major college athlete than it is to be a professional football player, a professional athlete that's actually paid. Secondly, I would argue that the question is not should they be paid, because they are being, the pay for play is already in place. When they are given this so-called this scholarship to come and play, that is a form of payment. The issue is that the payment is not just. It's not enough. The quid pro quo is not equal. So in the legal terms, that's what we would call an adhesion contract, or in other words, it is unfair to one party, so therefore it should be void. When you're talking about from the 1950s using the same model that we have now in 2013, it doesn't make sense. Universities and the NCAA are generating, as you stated, billions and billions of dollars. In fact, you're right. The NCAA is the most, or college sports is the most lucrative sports industry in America, period, bar none. And for the labor force, the athletes, to not be able to have an opportunity to receive and actually profit monetarily off that is not right. Now, last thing I want to say, so it's really clear. You are a PhD, a professor in finance. I'm a JD. I'm a practicing attorney. I have a master's education. I'm currently a professor also. So I don't think anyone should come away from this conversation saying these guys don't understand the price and the value of education, because I believe we do, and we love education. And so some people say, well, they're getting a college education. That is the compensation. And I would argue that that is not enough, because the compensation of a college education, the system is set up that many of those people can't even take advantage of the education that's available. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very difficult. I believe a system that allows for a kid to be paid, to receive labor benefits of work comp, lifetime medical benefits, because we're not talking about those things, Dr. Boyce. When you talk about Kevin Ware at Louisville, who broke his leg so grotesquely, and everyone is feeling sorry about him, but the reality is when he graduates and completes his eligibility, and 10 years from now when he's having a problem with that leg, he's going to be responsible most likely to pay for that, and not the university and not the NCAA. And that is just not right.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that the ultimate measure of fairness is to go to Bob Stoops and say, hey, Bob, we're going to take away your $40 million contract, but we're going to give you and your kids free tuition. How do you feel about that? And I can imagine that Stoops might not like that deal. So the fact is, the fact is that I think he might have an issue with that. So I think.
Well, I agree, absolutely. I totally agree with you. In fact, you stated earlier, last year, people forget that the basketball player from Kansas State, I think his name was Jamal. I can't remember his last name right now, but he actually had his career ended because Jamal Samuels was his name. It just came to me. He had his career ended because he took $200 from his AAU basketball coach to buy some groceries. $200 to buy groceries because his quote-unquote full scholarship didn't cover all his basic necessities like food. And yet for Coach Stoops or any coach to say, to make light of that fact, I don't think it's right, and I don't think he's looking at this in the right perspective.
Well, I think we agree, and I think it's going to be a fight, but I think ultimately the athletes will win this fight. Professor Harry Edwards said that the labor rights of college athletes is the civil rights issue of the 21st century for college athletes, and I agree with him. There are bigger problems in the world, but for athletes, especially those who have families that are struggling, I think this is a huge wealth extraction. I mean, they literally are taking $1 billion a year out of the black community. So that's one of the reasons why I take that time to talk about this issue, because I think it's important. So I want to say thank you very much for your time, Brother Demario. I really appreciate it.
Oh, man, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Like you say, it's a topic that I'm very passionate about because it directly impacts so many people that I know, and directly impacts our community. At the end of the day, as a lawyer, it's just not just and equitable, and that's my passion, is to fight for justice and equality for everyone everywhere I see it.
All right. Well, justice and equality, that's what we fight for, and I appreciate you for that. And also, for those of you who are listening, I appreciate your time as well, and thank you all for checking us out at yourblackworld.com. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.